Mercury and Virgo. This is a great placement right here. See, they ain't doing all that extra stuff. They ain't getting emotional about shit all the time when they're thinking about stuff. They ain't, getting all, extra about things. Getting loud and, obnoxious about what they're doing or what they want done for them or whatever. These people can sit back a little bit, but not just sit back now. They don't just sit back. They look at something and they look at it in a very detailed way. These people like to analyze. The key here is they're analyzers. And they analyze it for what is there, not like doing extra. Okay, like I might be looking at a tree, right? And they can tell me, or guess, they like to, think about things. How many rings does this tree have in it? They're thinking things like that. Like if you cut that tree down in half, how many rings does the tree have? How old is that tree? All kind of things. And then they know how to do that too, like how to get that answer. They would try to figure that out. These guys are kind of problem solvers. These females are kind of, not problem solvers, but they are, more so than the other females. These people like to hold other people to a higher standard too. I want you to think, deeper too, or a little bit more, analytically. You might be seeing something, right? But there's more to be seen in what you see. And these people know that. You're not quite seeing things right, and they might be right about that. They might be, because they see all kind of details that other people kind of glance over, or like maybe I am looking at one thing and I'm like looking at it and I'm like exaggerating that part of it. So I see a tree and then I see like there's a branch that's just like really beautiful or catches my eye, and I'm focused on that. They're focused on like the whole tree and how, okay, that piece might be like that, but there's this branch that does this. This branch has this many leaves on it. It's this color. It's this type of color. It's not just green. It's like forest green or they're doing shit like that at all times. They do shit like that. They're smart people. That's a true Mercury placement. That's a placement you want. And these people typically have it. Like I said, there's Virgos who have it, and then there's Libras who have it, and there's also Leos who have that Mercury placement too. Typically they'll be more overly analytical if they're like a Libra or a Virgo, but if they're a Leo, they could, kind of spice things up and make it more like when they're talking about what they see to somebody else or trying to make something better, they're more creative about it and can make people see it their way. And they're like, well, damn, you made that, fun, kind of, Another person who might be talking about it might just be saying like, hey, it's more than you think it is. It might just be a shop, but there's like, all kind of work that went into making it, and it had to be this way, and this many this and this many that. These people, do that, man. They really do think. They're the true thinkers of the zodiac on some real shit. But they're also thinking, right? So they ain't gonna always talk. They like to do. So like they'll take something that's there and then they can say, well, how do I improve upon what's already there? That's another thing about these people. They like to, improve upon what's already there to make that, whatever it is, more perfect. We can, design this street better. We can design these buildings better. We can design this water filtration system better to where, there's a less, because like it's not the most effective it could be, at distilling water or whatever, making it drinkable water. We can make it even more refined and make water better, for people to drink. These people are the ones who like are doing things like that, or have the ability to do things like that. Your friend that is like, you're not doing things right. I told you to, do it like this. These people also, if you like have something laid out, they can kind of remember what's there. And like, if you moved something even an inch, they'll know about it. You can't fool them with any games or anything like that. If you moved it ever so slightly, they'll be like, no, earlier it wasn't like that. You actually moved it, you fucked around with it, that's not cool, especially if it's their stuff. But that's Mercury and Virgo for you. Very analytical thinkers, they pay attention to the shit that other people don't pay attention to. And they want to improve upon things that are already there. And that's where their mind goes when they're looking at things and they're thinking about things. And when they're talking about stuff, and that's typically how these people think about things. As it's a Mercury placement, Mercury and Virgo, be cool on the corner. You're kind of cool, but you're really, a guy or female that does stuff to make shit like the best it can be. And that's what these type of people, think like.